Hey, what's going on, my friend? It's Jeff Newport from ChasingStrength.com. And in today's video, we are covering part 3 in the video series, 5 things training college athletes taught me about getting strong and lean with kettlebells. So let's jump in, shall we? One of the most frustrating things about being a college strength and conditioning coach was having to disabuse head team coaches or assistant coaches of their faulty or wrong thinking about how to physically train athletes to win. And you would think, well, these are Division I, head coaches and assistant coaches. Surely they know what they're talking about. And, that may be true here in the 2020s, but in the mid 1990s and the early 2000s, the mentality that we ran into more often than not was, this is how I trained, so this is how I train my team. Okay. And as you can no doubt guess, that is not exactly the best way to train people, especially if you were an athlete who got severely injured, as many coaches did, by overtraining or using the wrong means and methods for your training. Okay. So one such case was actually my wife's coach, the head volleyball coach. And the first preseason I was the team strength coach, I was called in to talk with her about why her girls were so sore and could barely move on day 2 of preseason. And the answer was because they had had their 4-mile run test the day before and also their 10K meter rowing ergometer test. So in case you were wondering, they were all toast and the head coach was mad. I mean, she was madder than a hornet, right? Like you see steam coming out of her ears. She wanted to know why she had to rearrange practice because the girls were so sore and exhausted, they could barely move. So I did something that was rare for me at the time. And I asked for permission to speak freely and she gave it. And so I did. And basically what I said was, well, coach, what does running 4 miles have to do with repeatedly jumping and moving as fast and as explosively as possible, multi-directionally across the volleyball court? Or something to that effect. Okay. Like I said, this was 25 years ago, maybe a little more. It's August of 1997. So you do the math. Okay. She said, well, it built an aerobic base. And I said, well, that may be true, coach. Volleyball is not an aerobic based sport. It's a power sport. It's an anaerobic based or anaerobic dominant sport. And it requires the ability to produce high levels of power or force repeatedly. Running long distances trains the exact opposite of that ability. Okay. So as a result of that conversation, I got to build the conditioning program for the rest of the preseason and into the season, not just the strength program. What's that have to do with you and your kettlebell training? Well, a lot, actually, if you fall under the conventional wisdom, right? Or that this is the way it's always been done. So this is the way it needs to be done, or this is the way I need to do it. Okay. So most people today still chase fatigue and use that as a measure of their workout's success. Let me say that again. Conventional wisdom states that most people chase fatigue and use that fatigue or the buildup of that fatigue as the measure of their workout success. What does that look like in layman's terms? Well, man, I'm exhausted. That was a great workout. Or man, I almost threw up. That was a great workout, right? Or man, I had to choke the puke back down. That was a great workout, right? Or oh man, I'm so sore. I can barely move my legs. That was a great workout, right? See, fatigue equals success, but that is not necessarily the case at all. In fact, in most cases, that is not the case at all, especially today with the advent of things like stop signs. Okay. If you don't know what those are, perhaps we'll cover those in a different video. But here's the truth that you have to embrace. Okay. And this is the truth across the board for elite athletes. Athletes train to win, and in order to do so, they train in such a way to minimize and mitigate fatigue. In other words, they don't chase it down, and neither should you. Okay. Again, they train in such a way as to win. Why? Why is this important? And again, what does this have to do with you and your kettlebell training and getting strong and lean? Very simple. Fatigue interferes with force production. Okay. Being tired decreases your strength and your output. Furthermore, being tired trains faulty technique. Okay. It changes the mechanics of the exercise performed. And in many cases, you end up performing a different exercise. And both of those open you up to the possibility and increased risk of injury. Okay. So let me just say this again. This is the whole point of an athlete's training. Okay. An athlete trains to get stronger, to minimize the effect of fatigue and what that does to his or her body so that he or she can play or perform at the highest of levels so that he or she can win. That's the point. So proper strength and conditioning supports that end goal. Fatigue, pursued or left unchecked, leads to several nasty things, some of which we already covered, but I'm just going to cover them again. We'll flash them up here on the screen. You can take notes. We'll put them in the description below. So 1, fatigue decreases force production. or power output. Okay, so that means you're weaker. Fatigue decreases power output or production, which I just mentioned, but what that really means is you can't do as much work. Fatigue changes your exercise form or technique and breaks it down, which means you're no longer training that exercise or movement, but some weird bastardization of it, all right? Opens the door to injury. Either acute, think like an ACL rupture, so the ACL is the anterior cruciate ligament in your knee, or some kind of delayed and or chronic injury. Okay, so think elbow tendonitis. Fatigue increases circulating cortisol levels, which, if left unchecked, can actually create more stomach fat. Okay, and if really left unchecked, that increased cortisol will decrease your muscle mass. Okay, finally, increased fatigue contributes to incomplete or creates incomplete recovery, which can then lead to strength and muscle loss, right? Which we just covered briefly in the previous point. It can also lead to insomnia, depression, and anxiety, all three of which present all kinds of fun, right? How do you minimize or mitigate fatigue in your kettlebell workouts? Okay. There are three things you should do. Number one, stop your set or sets when your speed drops. Number two, rest longer between sets and go by heart rate or nasal breathing as to when to start your next set. And number three, instead of doing more reps per set, add more high quality sets if and when necessary, instead of pushing out or grinding out garbage reps. Why? Because your CNS, your central nervous system, is tired and it's no longer recruiting the high threshold motor units, which are, your fast twitch muscle fibers plus the motor neuron. And those fast twitch muscle fibers have run out of energy. And that means you are no longer using your largest, strongest, fastest muscle fibers, the ones that most of the college athletes I trained, and in fact, all the power-based athletes, sprinters, jumpers, throwers, and Olympic weightlifters use to win. Plus, as I mentioned before, if you push through this, if you tough it out because you're a tough guy, all kinds of nasty things can and will happen. Okay, see that detailed list that we just went through. Now, look, are there times in sports when you have to resist fatigue and still produce high levels of force? Yes, absolutely. One of the ways you train for that ability is to slowly titrate your fatigue into your training by slowly removing the rest. Okay. That's what I did with the wrestling team when I was training them. Here's a perfect example of one of the things that we did. We started the season running 300-yard shuttles, right? With a work to rest ratio of 1:4. So assuming that it took them 1 minute to run 300-yard shuttle, they rested 4 before they repeated the next one. Now, over the course of the next 3 months, we titrated the rest down and peaked for the EIWA championships with a work to rest ratio of 1:2. Now, personally, I've always thought that training my private clients using strategies from Olympic weightlifting, which is my personal sport of choice after I was done with wrestling, and wrestling, which was my favorite college team to train, has provided the best all-round fitness levels. That was my original attraction to kettlebells. Higher rep Olympic lifts without the precision technique. Now, one of my favorite modalities for combining the two, complexes, right? I've written about them at length. You can find them out on my website. You can check some of these videos for more information about complexes. But here's the important thing to know about training using complexes. When you program them correctly, titrating down the work to rest ratios like I did with my wrestlers, you not only learn how to manage or mitigate fatigue, to a certain extent, you can almost become fatigue resistant. Not to mention pretty darn strong. Now, I've put all these fatigue management mitigation strategies into a single kettlebell program that gets you stronger, leaner, and is significantly better conditioned in the same training block. Okay. The program is 16 weeks long. And even though it's anaerobic dominant, right, your aerobic conditioning will improve. And because it's a single kettlebell exercise program, you'll be punishing your core muscles too. And that, of course, will make you stronger as well. It's the same concept that I talked about in this video that I used with my college wrestlers. Really, it's the best of all worlds if you're going to use a single kettlebell and you want all-around strength and conditioning and fat loss. I'll leave a link to it below this video in the video description, if you want to check it out. So whether you choose to use that or put your own program together, remember, proper fatigue management is critical for getting stronger and more powerful while losing body fat. Okay. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, click the like button, smash the subscribe button, share it with somebody who can use this information to get leaner and stronger, and maybe who's a Metcon junkie and not seeing results. And leave a comment in the comment section below, right, if you have any thoughts about what you've learned in this video. Okay, until next time, my friend, stay strong.